Chapter 4, Section 1 is understanding demand. Some key terms from the section are demand, which is the desire to own something and the ability to pay for it. So it is how much somebody wants of a product or service. Law of demand states that consumers will buy more of a good when its price is lower and less when the price is higher. So it's just like you on a normal day. You will buy more of something if you can get it on sale and it's at a cheaper price than if it's more expensive, or if the price of that product goes up, you're going to buy less. Now there's certain things that can affect our demand. We have two effects we're going to discuss. First being a substitution effect. This is how consumers react if a good's price goes up. So for example, if you go to the store and you want to buy something to drink, typically you buy, let's say, an energy drink, and you realize that the price of that energy drink went up. Well, you're still thirsty, you're probably still going to buy something, but since the price of that energy drink went up, you may look to find a substitution or something else to replace that energy drink. So maybe instead you buy a soda because the price of that soda is cheaper than the price of the energy drink now that it has gone up. So in this case, you're going to buy or demand less of that product, and you're going to buy or demand more of another product in place of that, or as a substitution. Another effect we have is what's called the income effect. This is the change in consumption that results when a price increase causes real income to decline. So whether or not maybe you still have the same income, so you may still make $50 a week, but if the price of something goes up, doesn't mean you have more or less money in your pocket. It just means that costs more. So if things cost more money, it make us feel like we have less money or feel poorer because we now cannot buy the same amount of things that we used to buy because certain things are now more expensive. And the reverse would happen is if something now, like the price drops and an everyday good that you typically buy, you're going to feel like you have more money because now you have more money to spend on other items, even though you still may only have that $50. It just seems like you have more because the price dropped. Now, a way we sort this data is we use what we call demand schedules and market demand schedules. Demand schedule is just a table that lists all the quantities a single person would buy at various prices in a market. So if I asked you specifically how much of a good you would demand at a specific price and recorded that in a chart, that would be a demand schedule. We'll take a look at that here in just a moment. Now, a market demand schedule is the same exact thing as a demand schedule, except in this case, you're going to look at all the consumers in a market and what they will demand at specific various prices. So instead of maybe just asking you individually, now I ask the whole class, which would be the whole market, and record that data. Now to visually or graphically represent this, we draw what we call a demand curve or demand graph, which is just a representation of the demand schedule on a graph. So how does the law of demand affect the quantity demanded? Well, according to the law of demand, like I mentioned earlier, as the price of goods go up, you're going to buy less. And if the price of something goes down, you're going to buy more. So if you go to the store and you find a good sale, you may end up buying 1 or 2 or 3 more of those products than what you normally would, depending on what kind of product it is. Now, we can analyze demand schedules and demand curves to kind of see how consumers are going to react to changes in price. And this is what businesses and economists do, is they look at this information to determine, how much do we need to produce? Should we raise the price? Should we lower the price? And to try and determine how they would make the best profit. So like I mentioned, demand is just the desire to own something. So how much or how bad you want, or how many of something you want at a specific price. So here you can see visually, as the price of something goes down, our demand will go up. And the inverse, where the price of something goes up, the demand will go down. So what happens to demand for a good when the price increases? Now we're going to look at this graph here, and we have a couple different effects we talked about earlier, income effect and substitution effect. Now, let's say product A is a cheeseburger. So if the price of a cheeseburger increases, what will we do? Well, according to the income effect, let's say you still have, you have your $50 allowance and you go to a restaurant to buy a cheeseburger. Well, now let's say the price of a cheeseburger went from $3 to $5. Well, you still have your $50 in your pocket, but now that you're paying $5 for a cheeseburger, you feel like, that's much more money than what you normally pay, so it's like it's taking away from your income. Your income didn't get smaller, you still have that $50, but you have to pay more now for that product. So you're going to buy less of the cheeseburger than you normally would have. So maybe instead of buying 2 cheeseburgers, you may only buy 1. You're also not going to buy more of any other goods because now you have less money to spend since you're spending $5 on a cheeseburger instead of the $3. Now the reverse of that would be if the price of a cheeseburger goes down or decreases, you'll probably buy more of that cheeseburger. So maybe now if the price of a cheeseburger went from $3 to $2 instead of going up from $3 to $5, you may buy 2 or 3 cheeseburgers. And you may also buy more of other goods because now you have more money to spend. Since you normally spend $3, now if you're only spending $2 a cheeseburger, it actually gives you more money. Now the substitution effect works like this. If a cheeseburger price goes up, now instead of paying $5 for that cheeseburger, you may look for a different option. So maybe you say, well, I'm not going to pay $5 for a cheeseburger. I'll buy the chicken sandwich because the chicken sandwich is $3. So now your demand for that cheeseburger is going to go down, but your demand for a substitute product, which would be the cheeseburger, will go up. Then if we look here, if the price decreases of that cheeseburger, you're going to have a higher demand, and you're also going to have a lower demand for that substitute because that's what you want is the cheeseburger. That's your initial demand product. So if the price of that goes down, you're probably going to demand more cheeseburgers and you're not even going to think about the chicken sandwich. So like we just talked about, the substitution effect works like this. You react to the price of a product, whether it goes up or goes down, and most times you're going to look at an alternative. If you feel like the price of something is too high, you probably won't buy it unless you absolutely have to, and even then you'll only buy maybe 1. So for example, let's say in the cafeteria, the roast beef sandwich goes from $4.50 to $5.25. People still may buy the roast beef sandwich, but they instead will probably look for an alternative. So let's say chili is the other option they have. Well, the demand for chili may go way up because people were saying, well, I'm not going to spend that kind of money on a roast beef sandwich, so I'll just buy the alternative. So the demand for that product goes down, and the demand for your secondary or substitution product will go up. Also works with price drop. The price is decreased on a product, you may then look for that other option. The income effect works like this then. We mentioned if you have a $50 allowance, so no matter what, you have that $50 in your pocket, nobody's putting more in there, it's just the way that you feel about it. So if the price of something goes down, typically you spend $5 on it and now you're only spending $3 on it, you still only have that $50 as your income. You're not getting a raise or anything like that. It just seems like you are because now you're spending less money on a specific item. And the inverse, if the price of that item goes up, you're going to feel like you have less money because now you're spending more on that item, even though your income is still that $50 a week. A demand schedule, like we mentioned earlier, is a table that represents all of the demand at a specific price or at a various price. So if we look at an individual demand schedule, we'd be looking at how much someone would demand at each various price. Now a market demand schedule is the exact same idea as a demand schedule, but only this time you're looking at how much all consumers in a market would demand at various prices. So instead of just me personally asking each individual how much would be demanded at $1, $2, $3, now I would have to factor in how much anybody who would be willing to buy that product would buy at each various price. Now, market demand schedules are used to help predict the total sales of a commodity. So if you look at how much is demanded at each price, you could multiply the demand by the price to kind of factor in or predict somewhat of an idea of how much would be sold and at what value that profit would be. So if we look here real quick, we have in the green or the left-hand side here an individual demand schedule. So for pizza, if we look at a slice of pizza at various prices, you'll notice that the quantity demanded also goes down as the price goes up, which refers to the law of demand. But if we look at an individual person, maybe for $1, this person may buy 5 pieces of pizza or 5 slices of pizza, and then 4 slices, 3 slices, 2 slices, the price goes up. Well, if we look at the market demand schedule, you'll notice that the quantity demanded is much larger than the individual. This is because we're including everybody that would be interested in buying a slice of pizza. So maybe this would be your own individual demand schedule for a slice of pizza in the cafeteria, whereas the market demand schedule would be if we polled everyone in the cafeteria to see how many slices of pizza would be demanded at specific prices. Now, a demand graph, which we'll go into as we get into the chapter, is just a graphic representation. So you're actually drawing a graph to represent the data we have on a demand or a market demand schedule. Now, the vertical axis is always going to be the price. So the price will be on the vertical axis, and it's going to run from the very bottom. You'll start at 0, and then the higher the price, the higher you're going to go up on the vertical axis. Now, the horizontal axis will always be quantity, and the same idea here. The lower the quantity will start on the left-hand side, and as the quantity rises, it's going to go to the right. So real quick, we have a couple examples. If we graphed out those demand schedules for Ashley's demand for slices of pizza, it would look like this. So at $6, she didn't want 0 slices of pizza, and then so on and so forth. We go down to $1. She has a demand of 5 slices. You also notice that a demand curve will always run downward sloping. Okay, now if we looked at the market demand curve, it's the same principle. We just have a larger quantity demanded here. All right, and once again, this is going to be running at a downward slope. Market demand curves are also going to be used to help predict quantity demanded for companies. So if I was an owner of a company, I would be looking at my market demand curves to try and predict how much of my product would be demanded at a certain price so I can plan accordingly for my production. Now, a market demand curve is only accurate at a specific set of conditions in the market. Now, obviously things happen all the time. For example, if we have a natural disaster, that can change the demand for a lot of different products, and there's a lot of things that we're going to talk about down the road which will shift what we call our demand curve. All right, well, thank you very much. Have a great day.